Slides are supposed to make ideas clear, but too often they make us work harder instead. And nowhere is that more obvious than in consulting presentations. In this video, we'll take a look at several slides from the Boston Consulting Group, see what's wrong with them, and how they can be improved. I'll show two redesigned versions, a more conservative one that stays within corporate limits, and a bolder one, as if I had complete creative freedom. But either way, they still remain consulting slides. Let's begin. I'm sure this video will be useful, not only for consultants, but for anyone who struggles to communicate ideas through slides. I'm Tony Harris, a professional presentation designer. For many years, I've not only been creating presentations for companies and startups, but also teaching people how to design them themselves, clearly, modernly, and with a focus on meaning. In my work, I often see slides like the ones we're about to look at, slides that have good ideas behind them, but are overloaded, outdated, and completely uninspiring. So in this video, I'll show you how to bring them back to life, even without radical changes. Here's our first patient. Overall, it's not the worst case, but the main problem is that it lacks hierarchy and visual direction. The information just sits there, leaving the viewer to figure it out on their own. So, let's see what can be improved. First, I changed the aspect ratio. The original was almost square, like something from the era of old projectors. A modern slide needs to breathe, so I stretch it to 16:9. It may seem like a small detail, but it instantly opens up the composition, gives it air and space for meaning. Next, I adjust the title to make it more direct and prominent, and remove the horizontal bar. It looks too dated. Then I go through the chart titles. They're too formal, too long, and don't actually explain anything. Same with the bottom text box. It feels overloaded, like something from a report, not a slide. I remove it all for now, so we can rebuild it later with a clear message in mind. Then I temporarily remove the second chart and focus on the first one. I delete the upper columns. They don't add any real value, just clutter the slide. I update the colors to visually separate the two datasets and highlight the key number, the difference between Sweden and global, as a standalone element. Now it's instantly readable. Once the first chart feels alive again, I bring back the second one and apply the same cleanup. Removing the unnecessary top columns, simplifying labels, and aligning fonts and colors, I also add a short, descriptive title so the viewer doesn't have to recall what it's about. I take Global Top 30 out of the chart, since it's already obvious, and bring back the bottom text, the one explaining context, but make it less contrasty so it doesn't steal attention. Finally, I replace the long company name with the BCG logo. At this stage, everything is visually clear and much better than before. For most office slides, this would be more than enough. But let's go further. I move the charts to the right and the text to the left. That's the natural reading flow, meaning first, data second. Next, I introduce additional visual depth to enhance the overall aesthetic. I apply a soft graduated gradient on the charts themselves, which adds dimension and makes the data feel more dynamic. Behind the text block, I place a subtle semi-transparent panel that creates a gentle separation between the textual content and the graphical elements. This layering technique helps to clearly distinguish the meaning and narrative from the supporting data visualizations, while also giving the slide a more structured and organized appearance. At this point, it already feels noticeably more modern and polished. For the final touch, I add an even larger background shape that sits behind the text section, further emphasizing the separation between the written message and the charts on the right. This visual hierarchy guides the viewer's eye naturally. It goes straight to the main message first, absorbing the key takeaway, and only then moves on to examine the supporting details and data visualizations. Now, the next slide presents a different kind of challenge, one that goes beyond mere visual design and touches on something more fundamental, the conceptual structure itself. This slide is significantly overloaded with competing ideas and information. The core message it's trying to communicate is that Sweden stands as one of the most innovative countries in the world, a powerful and impressive statement. However, the way this information is currently presented completely undermines that message, making the concept of innovation feel less like an exciting breakthrough and more like tedious bureaucracy. The slide contains 3 separate subheadings, numerous bullet points piled on top of each other, multiple charts competing for attention, and countless labels scattered throughout. Essentially, everything is shouting at once, all demanding the viewer's attention simultaneously, and as a result, the main point that should be crystal clear gets completely lost in the chaos. We start again by changing the aspect ratio, matching the visual style we established earlier. I also simplify the top section above the left chart. Instead of one heading, 2 subheadings, and 4 bullet points, I keep just one clear message. Sweden is a global innovation leader, followed by 2 short supporting points. I move the chart legend to the top and slightly tweak the colors. Then I bring back the 2 charts positioned on the right side of the slide. If you take a closer look and examine them carefully, you'll notice that in the original version, these charts are actually just screenshots taken directly from slides that appear later in the deck. In order to maintain that logical structure and preserve the flow of information, I use PowerPoint's built-in zoom feature, which allows the viewer to click on any chart and see it expanded to full screen view for better readability, and then return back to the main slide with just one more click. It's a simple yet elegant solution that helps keep the logic and structure of the original presentation intact while simultaneously adding a layer of interactivity and engagement. Now, I move the chart slightly upward and bring back the text comments, rewritten and simplified, just like we did with the first chart earlier. I add panels under the text for better composition. This already looks solid, but I want to push it further creatively. And that means working more deeply with the message, because great slide design always starts with meaning, not decoration. Back to the 2 charts on the right. I'm honestly not a big fan of keeping them displayed so small on the slide. The zoom trick certainly helps with accessibility, but I always try to move toward the simplest and clearest possible conclusions for the audience. So, I take the initiative to simplify these overloaded charts and transform them into concise, straightforward insights. Essentially, we make the conclusion for the audience instead of forcing them to extract it themselves from complex data. The left graph can be removed. The main conclusion from it is already on the slide. This becomes our final version specifically designed for the data lovers in the audience. But since we don't really need to keep the actual charts visible at all, I decide to place the main takeaways and conclusions directly inside the visual panels themselves. Now the viewer can instantly scan the slide in just a few seconds and grasp the core message without any effort. Now, let's get a bit more creative and experimental with the visual design elements. I start by adding soft shadows to create depth and dimension, and I underline the key phrase in the headline, specifically to make it stand out more and pop visually. Then I add additional background panels positioned under the main ones, which might seem redundant at first, but will come in handy for creating the next visual effect. I introduce a few 3D style icons to bring some energy and life to the composition and make it feel less flat. And finally, I apply a subtle glass effect that's inspired by Apple's current design trend and aesthetic. For those who prefer a more minimalist approach and find the icons and extra panels too much, I've also prepared a simpler, cleaner version that strips away those elements. Both redesigned slides successfully deliver the same core message and information as the original versions, but they do so without all the overwhelming visual noise and unnecessary complexity that cluttered the originals. Now, these slides truly focus on conveying meaning and clear communication rather than getting lost in visual clutter and distracting elements. Because at the end of the day, a genuinely good presentation isn't primarily about showing raw data points or displaying percentages and statistics. It's fundamentally about carefully guiding your audience step by step toward the right conclusion and helping them understand the key insights. If you'd like to dive deeper into these principles, there are links in the description that will help you improve your slides, structure, and storytelling. If you found this detailed breakdown helpful and valuable, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and tell me in the comments section below which design approach you personally prefer. Whether it's the more conservative and minimal one or the bold and creative one with additional visual effects.